And I believe the biggest opportunity today is getting our sales staff tied into the technology with social media and making sure that they're using that. Therefore, that takes them being willing to put themselves out in front of people, right? To record themselves, to talk about a car, to get a car out on social media, so on and so forth.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Keep the Change. One of my favorite times of the week when I get to hang out with superstars in business that are looking to go to the next level and teach others to go the next level. And that's what we get to do today. Today is one of our returning guests. Drew Tutton is an entrepreneur in a number of different industries. He has 2 RV dealerships. He's got a Chrysler Jeep Dodge dealership that is in Jasper, Georgia, and he also is a partner in a number of dealerships throughout Georgia and Alabama. Drew, thank you and welcome back to Keep the Change.
Thank you. Glad to be back. It's always fun.
Drew, about a few months ago, you and I had a opportunity to put together a culture scorecard report for your dealership. And in that scorecard came some areas that you wanted to install into your businesses, some areas that you wanted to fix. Maybe it was communication, maybe it was teamwork, maybe it was teams coming together and enjoying the journey, maybe it was values. And in our discussion, we took a day and sat in your office in Jasper. And in that discussion, we were talking about what John Maxwell content might be of value for your team. And you said, the area that I really want to focus on with my business is on a book that I read on an airplane once. And it might not have been that quick, but that was what I heard. And that book was called Winning by Jack Welch. Now, Jack has since passed, but this book is universally accepted as being an incredible state of art material for how to lead and win in business. And I'm going to give you the floor, my friend, to ask you a couple questions based on your businesses with the success you have. We're going to start with leadership, and then I want to get into that winning content. But when we hear leadership, how would you define leadership in the dealership and leadership in your businesses?
Yeah, I think leadership can happen in any level, I believe. In other words, I believe you can be, if you will, the lowest person on the totem pole and still be a leader. It's to me, it starts with what time you get to work. Are you getting there early? Are you ready? Are you doing that work with enthusiasm? Are you being the best at that job that you can possibly be? And are you a great representative for the company from whatever direction you're coming from? And then as you grow into where most of us think of leaders is once you get into management positions or you have people up underneath you or what have you, then it's going to be right. Are you leading by example? Are you still getting there on time? Are you the one that's opening the glass in the sales tower? Are you the fella that's willing to get up and take the TO? Are you willing to help and make sure the lock's straightened up? And also mentor our people, right? So we need to be able to coach our people in a positive way. And for me, my coaching style is at do it at the moment, right? Do it now. So when you see that opportunity of a sales manager not taking the TO, right? That's an opportunity for that GSM to talk to them right then and there. Well, man, why don't we take that TO? Here's what value I see in you. I know you'll be able to take that deal and show someone else a little bit better way of getting a better outcome. So for me, for leaders, that is what I look for. And you and I've talked through John Maxwell's steps to leadership and what that means, and there's no doubt that has great principle. And John hits it right on the heart, I think, as a leader, where you have a dictatorship, if you will, is the way I read into it. Or do you become a life coach? Do you become a coach that people want to play on your team and they want to follow?
Very good. You've compared you and I to Pete Carroll and Alabama's legendary Nick Saban. And I love that because I've got this gift of encouragement, and so do you. And you have a gift of definitely getting results. I like to think that about me too. But one is, hey, pat him on the back, and the other one is, I got a sharp boot. Right? But I love you anyhow. And those two styles can work, right? Both of those people had massive success. So when we think in terms of challenges within automotive currently, which again, different leadership styles handle in different ways, What are some of the challenges that are happening? Let's talk about automotive. A lot of our listeners are automotive. What are some of the leadership challenges that you've seen because you've got your hand in so many dealerships? And what are the opportunities to fix that? In other words, what are the challenges and what are the opportunities, the solutions, as you like to talk about, to fix that?
Yeah, I think the opportunities I see early on is that some of us, and I've said this many times, is the business hasn't changed much. Well, the facts are, depends on how you're looking at it because it has changed a lot. Back when I first got into the business, we had to hammer the phone. We had to make 100+ phone calls, outbound calls a day. And the expectation was going to close so many of those, turn them into appointments, so on and so forth. And I believe the biggest opportunity today is getting our sales staff tied into the technology with social media and making sure that they're using that. Therefore, that takes them being willing to put themselves out in front of people, right? To record themselves, to talk about a car, to get a car out on social media, so on and so forth. And that is the opportunity with a lot of our staff because they're intimidated to do that. So if we use that as an example of an opportunity, and then how do we get better or how do we get people to doing that? It goes back to training, right? It is setting expectations, it is training, and it's working with them on a regular basis until we all get comfortable with doing that project or that piece of our business.
I love that. Gallup talks about coaching and that 67% of the businesses that coach one-on-ones weekly at least have 67% more productivity because they spend the time to do the one-on-ones. But we'll talk about that later. But what you said was set expectations. Gallup says coaching is three things. And I think I say this every week. Number one, set expectations. Not only set expectations, though, find out what their expectations are. Because if they're not in alignment, there's going to be a little disconnect, and we wonder why aren't they doing what we're asking them to do. So that communication of setting expectations, they know ours, we know theirs. How do we make sure that we both of them walk the same path? I love the saying by Zig Ziglar, you can get anything you want if you help them get what they want, right? That's a big deal. And then continuously coach. You mentioned training, coaching and training are two different things, but continuously coach, continuously train. But the thing you didn't bring up, but is who you are, is define accountability. You are a person that defines accountability and you're black and white on holding to that to them, that accountability. We had that discussion offline before we got here about some other businesses that you're in where people said they were going to do something, but they didn't necessarily do it. And you said, why not? You said you were going to do it. Why didn't you do it? So I had a conversation with somebody about 4 months ago, and they said, I'm a nice guy. I struggle get holding people accountable. And I said, it's really simple. Decide what it is and remind them and ask them, how do you want me to hold you accountable for this? You said you do it. How do you want me to hold you accountable? And do what you say, Mrs. Leader, that you're going to do to lead them, right? Hey,
Yep.
remember you said you wanted this? I just want to remind you that's what you said. How are we doing with that? So those three things are crucial to Gallup. So you picked this book. You picked this book. And from that, we created a 24-week training on this book with one-on-ones and group training. And the book, of course, is Winning by Jack Welch. So tell us about that book in your soul, because it means a lot to you, and why you picked that content.
It does. That book, early on in my career, for whatever reason, I've always been a very driven, and therefore I, at times, would be accused, right, of maybe driving people too hard, too fast, expectations too high. And then when I found this book and started reading this book, I quickly realized there were some things that I was absolutely doing wrong that I needed to do better. And a lot of the things in the book I was doing and did not recognize I was doing them. And so, as you know, the one of the first things we start talking about early on in the book is candor. And some people mistake candor with a big stick, right? With, I'm just going to be candid. You suck at that, right? And really, candor is not that. Candor is just truth within the relationship, truth within the room. And because candor, it's when you have a high performer and you're afraid to say they're really good at their job, and hey, congratulate them and great job for all that you've been doing, because you don't want to offend someone else or make anyone else feel less. Well, then you're not having candor. So why would you not recognize that person? Why wouldn't you not recognize the great job they've done? But then also look at it in the mirror. Are you really recognize them just for the performance as we get deeper and start talking through the book? But are you recognize them because they have what we look for in a leader? Meaning they have the right train of mind, meaning getting to work on time. They're dressed for success. They're motivated. They already have appointments set before they ever get to the store. And by the way, if those appointments don't show up, they're following up with those appointments. They're following up on their birthday calls, following up on their anniversary calls. They're doing the things that lead to success. And that's normally the folks that are top 20, sell 20, 30 or so cars a month. Though they're doing those things because normally you don't get enough ups if you have the right setup or the store set up right. You normally don't get enough just raw leads to do that without having it from previous customers, referrals, so on and so forth.
That's good. So candor. We got to go deeper with candor, because why is it? We've talked about communication offline a little bit. We've talked about we're even going to do a communication workshop within your stores for all your people. Why is it that people struggle with candor? Is it because they don't understand what communication is? Because really, candor goes hand in hand with communication, right? What's your belief system of why communication slash candor ends up being a problem within most businesses? Why is that?
You know, Bart, I think it's because and I'm just going to give you a true touch thought on this, is that we get so inundated with everything going around us. And many times we find ourselves giving an opinion of something in our mind without really recognizing the person or recognizing the situation. So I think that leads to us not wanting to have candor. But when we're focused on business and we're focused on the material that's going to help us and help our business be successful, and that is the conversations that we're having, then candor does become extremely easy, I believe. But I think most people don't wanna offend someone else. They're afraid that they're gonna get in trouble because they say that sucks, right? So take a leader that says, "Hey, we're putting this product in place and we're gonna use this vendor, and that's just the way it is. That's we're moving out on it." Right? Well, number one, as a leader, did you get the right people together before you make that decision? And did you have trust and candor within those people? And then after your salesperson gets a hold of it and the product's not working, the picture isn't taken, the video's not happening, they can't find their customers easy if we're talking about a CRM, but they're scared to come back and talk to us. Why? Well, I think as a leader, we got to look in the mirror. Did we make it easy for them to come and talk to us? Or do we have an intimidation issue within our leadership?
Mm.
Or do we have, we want to make everybody happy. So don't say nothing out of row because Susie's going to get upset. Right? No, have a lot of candor and also be willing to take input from anybody that's on the team. Everybody has a place on the team if you are a great coach and you put the right players in the right seat.
Here's why Google says candor is, because some of us listening to this don't know what candor is really. So here's what it is: the quality of being open, sincere, and honest in speech or expression, often involving frankness about difficult topics. Patrick Lencioni wrote a book, The Five Dysfunctions of a Team. Number two is conflict. We have to have iron sharpens iron. It doesn't mean rubber sharpens rubber, right? We have to have that friction to have open, straight up communication. But say what you mean doesn't mean you have to say it abusively. I think that's
That
what
is
people
correct.
think
Yeah.
candor comes from. And most of the folks listening to this probably have some D in their personality, direct, and like you do, direct. This is the way it is, part of your personality. What you might not know about Drew, if you don't have an intimate relationship with Drew, is he's high on the I scale, right? You're an influencer. You know how to communicate. But when you get to the point where, hey, how come I have to tell you this again? You get more direct. Would you agree with that?
100%.
And in your direct, though, it is understood. You don't get direct first. You get direct when it needs to be done, when the boot needs to be a little sharper. Would you agree with that?
I do agree.
Yes, and because of that, you're a fantastic communicator. So, and here it is again, frankness and openness, truthfulness, honest directness. Oh my gosh, I might not always like to hear what you have to say, but man, I always respect it in the way it's brought forward to the table. You've got a young leader. Candor is a big part of being a good leader down the road and not watering it down, but being direct, being open, difficult conversations, crucial conversations. What are the tools that you would give to a young leader having lunch with you? What would you say to them to help them be more direct and be of more candor and be a better communicator?
Yeah, I think first we gotta be honest with ourselves, and that's where I had to get to, and be willing to listen, none of us are perfect, right? Jesus Christ is the only one that ever walked this earth and been perfect. And with it, within our team, we're very clear with that. We're not always gonna make the right decision, but we're gonna make a decision, number 1. Number 2, we're gonna do it with clarity, and we're gonna do it with the input and the information we have, and try to make the best decision we can for the team. So it's always about the team, not about me or about I. But as a young leader, the first thing I would say is think through the areas that we know that we're not the best we can be. And what I find is whenever I'm vulnerable to my team and I can be open with my team of this is an area I've got to get better, then it allows them to open up as well.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
So that the more comfortable we get in that area, then the more candor we have and the better results we get. Just think about right. Bart, you know me well. I'm not the guy that's going to talk about how great the dessert is. That's not my personality. But when you look at my plate and the dessert's gone, you're gonna know it's good. Nor am I the personality that's gonna gripe at the restaurant because it's not a good dessert. I just don't eat it, right? But that's just my personality. There's others in the room that will describe the dessert phenomenal, and they'll even know the ingredients that's in it. And the reason I point that out is because I need them on my team because I'm not gonna be that detailed in that scenario. And that's but I want them to feel comfortable. Now, I may call it short and say, okay, we get it. It's great. Let's move on. But at the end of the day, my shortness is just one function in the team.
Funny because in all the teams I looked at when I was a young leader, I had people around me just like me. Man, could they talk? They could motivate. We had the most motivated sales staff, but we had stuff everywhere. And in terms of moving them in their heart and emotionally, 100%. And then I realized I needed people around me that could dot the I's and cross the T's. And they might not have had the personality I had, but I needed them next to me to lift me up, to complete me, if you will. And I
Yep.
think that's what John says, have leaders around you that are like you. I got to debate that a bit. I don't want every leader around like me. I want people that are different than me. And I've got a right hand person in our ministry that's totally different. And I wanna poke him because he's got such a lousy personality at times. He's kinda grumpy, but man, does he cover all the pieces that I can't cover, and that's
That's how
so
we
cool.
learn from each other.
Yeah,
The more our country would get that way, the better off we are. We
yeah,
would be, right?
yeah. Well, that's another podcast.
Yeah.
We'll bring you back for that one too.
There you go.
So let's talk about this. And again, great stuff. You mentioned something when we first started. When I say great stuff, I'm very selfish. Every time I bring you aboard here, it's because of the fact that I learned so much myself. So thank you for that.
Thank
And
you.
it's us getting to look at each other. And since we can't have lunch, at least we can look at each other on the podcast. But I want Eustace Wolfington founded Half a Car, which is a company I worked for a number of years. Eustace is now 93. He's also a friend of the podcast. He's somebody he's a Catholic, Drew. He goes to mass every morning at 6 o'clock. I mean, he's committed to his faith. Amazing man. Amazing. If you ever got an opportunity to meet him, you'd be blown away. He also is the executive director of the movie Cabrini. If you want to watch a great movie about a nun who changed the world, that's a great movie. But the reason I bring him up is he had 55 leadership lessons. And one of them, he talked about communication. And he talked about the three C's, which initially was taught to desk people, but it's a great communication style for everybody. The first C is connect. And what that means, it might mean is ask questions. And what that means is connecting with the person that we're communicating to. You and I spent 15 minutes before we hit record connecting, even though we know each other. Obviously, not every communication can take 15 minutes, but how do we connect with the person on the other side? Because if we don't connect, we're rubbing the wrong way, maybe. The next one is convey. And that's where I see candor. We've connected. Now let me convey the message. And then the last C is check. So it's connect, convey, and check. And that's the piece, Drew, I think a lot of us miss. What did I just say? What did you hear me say? It's like two humans or two different satellite dishes, and we have all these different things, these attitudes and feelings between the two dishes. So we think we're communicating, but we're really not. So one of the biggest areas I believe with communication, including candor, is what do you hear me say? So make sure we're on the same sheet. And that to me has really helped my communication a lot because I assume just because I said it with candor, then somebody understood. But sometimes they just don't. So thank you for that. Thank you for setting the stage. So let's talk about values because you're a person of value that adds value to people of value. That's who Drew Tutton is. When the first chapter of the book is on values and mission, talk to me about what that's meant to the Drew Tutton companies and those that you're in partnership with.
Yeah, thank you for asking that. You know, I go back to Bart when I first got in the car business was early 90s. And I remember I hadn't been in it maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and I had a customer who says, "Man, you'll never make it in this business." I said, "Why is that?" "Well, you're too honest. You're too nice of a guy." And I just really took offense to that, right? Because I'm like, how can that be? But I say that because I think for whatever reason, the automotive industry had this bad look as though we were going to mislead people, a lot of people, or what have you. And so early on, I was very committed based on my faith. And you know the story of how I grew up. I had two roads to choose, and fortunately, I think I chose the right one. And with that, but my faith grounds me in always doing the right thing ethically and morally, and that is extremely important. But you also have to have the value of work ethics. You have to have the value of respecting one another. The value of for us is for team and for working together. And so when you take those values and you start instilling them in a company, but if it's not talked about regularly, as you and I have talked, then it can absolutely leave a company. It's not something that we just put it in place and forget it. It's something we have to demonstrate on a regular basis with our managers, with all of our employees of how important our values are. But our values are very faith-based. Our values are very family-oriented. And when I say family, I'm careful, again, I have great people around me that can balance my board, if you will, but when I say family, that doesn't mean 9 to 5. You're gonna work. And my belief has always been the harder I work, the more I can provide for my family. Now with it, we gotta have some balance, but I am definitely more of a quality of work and the ethics behind of winning, and sometimes winning takes longer than the average guy is willing to put in. But our values, again, is faith-based, family, and then dedication to do the right thing and work ethic.
Okay. When you and I were talking about this, you showed me a sign that had these values.
Yeah,
Can you go over all those, please?
I sure can, yeah.
Yeah.
Just faith and integrity, health and wellness, right? Taking care of self, growth and development, because we're really committed to grow others. Community is another big piece of it. And I think family and community go hand in hand. Excellence in performance. We want people that show up to work every day to be the best they can possibly be as a person, number one, and then in their job as well. And then the last is accountability and ownership. We need people that are going to own the situation and they understand that we as a unit, we're going to hold each other accountable for that.
What's so great about all those is everybody has a really good idea what those are. In other words, it's not none of that is a surprise. You
Yeah,
make that clear to them when you hire them, and you've got it right next to you on your desk, and it's just part of who you are. And that.
for sure.
So let's talk about differentiation. And that was a topic that's chapter 3 in the book Winning. And that was a topic that the author talks about being a little controversial. But the reality is, a lot of folks listening to this, if you're a small business owner, you get this. You can't afford not to do this. But go ahead and explain in your words what differentiation means and why it's so important to use this strategy.
Well, what it means to me, it starts with candor. I think candor rolls into differentiation, right? So when you can recognize people's skill set and you recognize those that are just wired different, right? God made us all, but thank goodness He did not make us all the same. And therefore, we always talk about the top in our world based on performance. We'll get to talking about the top 20%, right? Or the top performers, the people that really separate themselves from the pack. But with differentiation, you can identify them, but you're also identifying your core, which is the middle 70. But being able to differentiate one another, it gives people a pathway to understand, how do I get better? Who is looked at as being better? And what do I bring to the table? So as a company, we got to make sure that the middle 70 does not lose focus of their importance. But when you have those people that get there earlier, that have a better way on the phone, that have a better way of presenting a product, a better way of closing, a better way of presenting F&I products, you got to recognize those people and recognize that skill set. And that allows other people to grow as well. I believe that some people get caught up in differentiation with thinking that we're belittling somebody else because we're lifting someone else up. My belief is no, we are lifting people up so that we understand this is how we all want to be, right? So if I look at my faith, I'll look at Christ, that Christ is different. What makes him different? In my world, I will never get there. But he's truth. He's transparent. He has accountability with this is what the expectation, biblical expectations are. And when you're able to accomplish that, then there's win. And when you don't, there's normally some loss. And no different in our business. When we set the expectation and we set that with our people, we set it by doing forecasting or goal setting or what have you. But when people hit it and we recognize it, they're showing us the pathway.
You know what's interesting is that, the days in business, we know this, that you can't give everybody a trophy. And that not everybody gets a trophy. The people that perform get trophies. And that's the biggest message that I'm hearing you're talking about here too, is hey, we're going to reward our 20 percenters, our top performers, and we're going to support our 70 percenters to get into that and to be 20 percenters. And that to me is, you mentioned expectations. Isn't that the foundation of all of that? Your expectation is to get here if you work for us. Your expectation is if you're not here, we're going to help you get there, but you have a responsibility. You have anything you want to throw into that?
No, no. Jack points it out if you remember in the book in this chapter, because what he talks about is when he was a kid and you'd be on the ball field and picking your teams, right? Rather be you played baseball, football, kickball, whatever, right? But hey, we all got pointed out of who was the better player or who was not. And then you knew your place. You knew that, hey man, I need to watch that guy. He's always picked first. And what is it he does different? How can I get to that? Or you said, hey, this sport's not for me. I need to get on with something that is more like me. And that is another example. What differentiation does is when someone comes on just to say to sell cars for us, if we can't be honest and transparent with them on what they need to do to get better, then really we're holding them back of their full potential in life. Because if they're not meant to be a car salesperson, let's recognize that within the first, 6 months of them trying this with candor, with recognizing the top to where they can understand, is this the right spot for them or not?
Yeah, that's so cool. So this morning I was listening and I heard a guy talk about discipline and accountability, which really those two words are so powerful. And I was talking to somebody in a one-on-one group and I said, I gave them a couple people actually these words that to me lay the foundation of who I am. And I know that you'll agree with this. Number one, we have to have clarity. Gotta have clarity. If we don't know ourselves, we can't grow ourselves, right? Once we have clarity, then we see, okay, I'm going to make a decision. You would mention, hey, when I read that book, there were some things I realized I'm doing pretty good at. And also things I need to get better at. Okay, what's the decision, right? The next thing is once we make a decision, we have to ask ourselves if we committed to that decision. And that commitment, right? So many times we say, "Oh, I'm kind of in." Well, that doesn't quite work. Right? Are you in or not? And that doesn't mean you have to die to it, but it means you have to die to it. To die to everything else means that you're committed, right? The next one, consistent every day, every time, without fail, no exceptions. The next one is once we do all that, we have clarity, we make a decision, we're committed, we're going to be consistent. Now we have accountability people to hold us to that, to hold us accountable. And or we ask ourselves, how can we hold ourselves accountable? But I got to tell you, I couldn't be where I am today without having a coach. Couldn't happen. I need my coach to hold me accountable. My coach asked me something yesterday, and I, believe it or not, I locked up. I couldn't give an answer. And when I thought about it, I thought, aha, if he hadn't asked me that question, I would have had a blind spot on. So he opened a door that I didn't see, even though I do coaching every day. So again, the power of accountability partners with all that is huge. So we're a little up on it on time, but I want to, in the chapter on leadership, which is chapter 5, Jack comes up with 8 things that leaders do. I want to hit on a couple of these with you, okay? And here's the first one. I want you to comment on this, please, based on the way you lead. Leaders relentlessly upgrade their team using every encounter as an opportunity to evaluate, coach, and build confidence. So that's on page 63. I notice you're going through your book. So,
You're okay.
le-
Yeah.
yep. So, talk to me about that. Leaders relentlessly upgrade their team using every encounter as an opportunity to evaluate, coach, and build self confidence. Man, that's rich.
It is because at times, right, I believe we put leaders in place and then we stop coaching them, stop communicating to them, and quite honestly, stop evaluating them if we're not careful. And
Mm.
but also, for me, when I started putting this practice in place, I had less turnover unless it was turnover I wanted to happen. And because I was clear and here's our goals, here's my expectation, here's what I'm looking for, and here's what we're trying to get to, and here's what we're doing. And as I work with them on a day to day basis, when we're not hitting those goals, we're missing them together. And here's what we're going to work on to get there. And some people just don't get right there. Again, they're not meant for that job. And if we're able to recognize that's where we change people. But for this, for me, was more when it says upgrade their team. For me, I'm upgrading the talent that I already have. I'm getting them the tools they need. We're working together to get ourselves better and get us where we need to be. However, we do have the mindset if we don't get there, it's no surprise to nobody on the team that there is going to be a change.
Yeah. Well, you said that to us when we decided to do this journey on this project. And you said it to all your people. We're investing in you. In 6 months, we're going to look at this and we better have some results, right?
Yep.
It was super clear. One thing that becomes clear too is we were in a meeting a couple weeks ago and you asked one of your teams, who are your 20 percenters? I want you to define who your 20 percenters are. We're going back to differentiation and define the 70 percenters. And if you have 10 percenters, why are they still here if they don't have any opportunity to become a 70 percenter? But the result of that conversation is your team, that particular team, realized they had no 20 percenters. And when they really looked at it like that, it allowed them to say, what do we do? What's the solution, as you always talk about, now to get our 70 percenters to the next level? And for you, and part of that, every day, every time, train, starting here, done here. This is what you're going to train on. Have a calendar in place. Make sure your processes are clear to everybody. And with that, you held them accountable. And it was interesting. And during the one-on-ones with these folks, they were really clear on they knew what they had to do to build 20 percenters and what decisions to make.
Yeah, because as a leader, we have to look at it and say, if we don't have 20 percenters and we can't recognize our 20 percenters, 70 percenters, then we have failed them as a leader, right? Have failed them as a coach. I mean, what is your job as a leader, right? What is our job as a leader? It is making a difference in other people's lives, improving their lives through us, right? So the better we do at coaching and counseling them, then the better that they will do, so on and so forth. So with me, that was a, in my that situation for me, I had failed the team and the team had failed their team.
And that's humility. That's leadership with humility, right?
Yeah.
So thank you for that. So I love this one. Leaders get into everyone's skin. I got to hear a Drew comment on this. Ex- Exuding, I can't say that word, exuding, exuding, positive energy and optimism.
Yes.
Talk to me about that and what that means to you as a leader and how that sparks you.
Yeah, so this year when I think of that particular deal, this year it's the word now for me, right? So I absolutely get into everybody's skin with now. And now means now, right? There's no time for waiting. So example, when we decided that, hey, why can we not recognize our 20 percenters? What we got to is we found out that we're not training. We say we're training, but really, we're just talking them through a car deal. We're just working with them when they come in for the TO. But we did not have a defined time of we're going to meet every morning at 8:30 and we're just going to for 15 minutes we're going to talk about a subject whatever we're going to get. So for me, I do get into people's skin with I want it now and this is what I want. However, to me it's important that I'm not asking them to do something just for the sheer purpose of doing it. It's the end result. And the end result is in this scenario, we don't have a good sales team. We're not selling enough cars and we identified why. And therefore the training piece is the why. And then to walk in and it not get done, that's going to be a problem, right? But I do it with energy and I do it with there's a purpose. Our end goal is that we're going to make these people better because I think you were in the meeting when I said example is do our people know how to sell a hybrid Pacifica right now? Gas prices are higher than they've ever been. Can I go out there and grab anybody off your sales floor and get them to sell me the benefits and features of the hybrid? And there was silence in the room.
It's interesting how that works. The quality of our questions determines the quality of our teams. When you ask that question, that forces them to either say something stupid or not say anything at all. Right?
Correct.
That's a power question. I talk about questions all the time as coaches. We and the dominant personalities in the room get that, man, we're going to tell them what to do. But most of the time, when we tell them what to do, it's like a force field, or a shield around us, and it bounces right off. And they say, yeah, and they never do it. And it goes back to what we talked about earlier. When you ask a great question and they're forced to answer, I had that happen today. I had it happen today with one of your people that is a little fluffy on one of his answers. And I said, no more 10,000-foot level. We're going to go deep because I asked him about communication. I asked him, what are you doing right now? And he said, well, I'm communicating really good. I said, great. Tell me about that. Well, we're having good conversations. I said, no, give me some specifics. Tell me exactly what you mean by that. Because if you can't do that, then it's fluff. So that gives us one more. I love this one. Leaders probe and push with judgment. They're curious. That borders on skepticism, making sure their questions are answered with action. So land us on this because this is a really positive tool that you and I are doing together and that your team is learning about. Tell me what that means to you and your teams as far as leadership.
I think of the scenario I'd give on this is that I put a BDC area in a particular dealership. We've done a remodel and I have an area that we have some desks set up. And in my world, all of the phone calls go in there, all the emails go in there, and that's where the salespeople come, if you will, the think tank. And that's where it all comes. This particular store has not had that in years because this is new. Well, I walk in and we don't have people occupying the desk. So I just ask, Hey, just out of curiosity, do we do we not see value in this particular area? Oh, well, sure we do. Yeah, absolutely we do. Okay, then it was originally set up for this. Why have we not done that? Help me understand it because I am curious as to why we have not. We don't have enough salespeople, and the salespeople are used to being out at their desk. They're used to being on the showroom, and they're just more comfortable out there. I said, then help me because again, just do we not think that we could increase our closing ratio? Do we not think them being close by us makes us more accessible as managers? Do we not see the value in them being right here? Again, quite a bit of silence. And then I said, so just think about that and help me understand why we would not find value in that. Right. So I say that because then I come back a week later, right? And this stuff starts getting implemented because finally I think the light bulb went off with them with, yeah, we can increase our closing ratio. Yes, they can hear me more. I can hear them better. Does that kind of help drive that home a little bit?
Oh, I think you drove it home beautifully, and I think that my wife listens to every one of my podcasts, so she really knows you because 'cause you've been on here, right? And she supports me so much. She'll say, "Oh, that was great." She'll give me positive direction, but she's so supportive. And yet, in this particular comment I'm gonna make, she hears it every week. She's probably gonna roll her eyes. And here's the comment. Here's my favorite quote on the planet. I have 2 favorites, the other one I brought up earlier. "A man or woman convinced against their will is of the same opinion still."
Yep.
Leaders, if you're really a leader, you're getting them to come up with the answer and the solution. Because if not, you have to force your expectations on them. They're never gonna shift, and you're wondering why that doesn't happen. When you can get them to come up with, even in rudimentary questions or more deep questions, and they come up with some kind of an answer that is their answer, not an answer that's fluff. Because if it's fluff, you as a leader, Drew, or any great leader is going to say, "Mom, that's fluff. Tell me the real reason." Go deeper. Explain that to me. Let me understand. When you ask as those questions as a leader, it forces the subconscious to actually come up with a result. When they up with a result or an answer, they own it. When they own it, you'll find you have to do less probing with questions like that because now they've got it, right?
Yep.
And that's our
100%.
ultimate goal. So tell me a little bit about as we wrap, and this I'm not going to go through any of those other questions, but man, they're so good. I would recommend the book. If you want to do this for your dealership, you can call Drew and ask him how it's working for him, or you can call me and we can develop it for you. But what has this content done for you to build your businesses since that day on the airplane that you read the book? I mean, you're so passionate about this. What has this content done for you as a leader? And what do you see it doing for your team as you're embracing them, you're investing in them, and you've got a 24-week commitment with them on growing this and growing themselves as leaders? Tell me, what has this content done for you as a leader?
Well, it gets us, I think, tighter as a team, meaning getting us comfortable with one another and really focused on the business. You know, as you go on through the book, it talks about if you're not top one or two, then what are you doing? Right? If you're not striving to get there and you're not getting there, why do you still have that business? So even in the automotive, right? I drive our parts, our service, our body shop, each department. If you can't be at the top of our game, then what are we doing? So if we're not there, we gotta be driving to get there. And then once we do get there, we better understand that there's other people right behind us that's doing just what we were doing last week. And so we gotta keep driving. So it creates a real winning atmosphere within the company, within the departments, and we get everybody brought in. Again, sometimes we don't talk it as you said, we don't talk about differentiation enough and candor because those 2 things, we want our porters to say, "You know what? We can do a better job with the delivery." And this is why. But they got to feel comfortable. Most companies, the porter don't, they feel belittled by everybody else, whether it be in their own mind or the way we act, that they cannot put their opinion there. My porter in service, I think I have one of the best delivery, receiving and delivery and service just because my porters are the ones that make it up, right? They know that they own that. They have to own that. And when the customer gives us a Google review, as soon as I pulled up, that guy was there to help me. When I got ready to leave, they opened the door for me. That is a kudos to them.
That's so powerful. So I want to jump on something, great athletes, we talk sports analogies, you and me many times, but great athletes end up being great in anything they do walking out of there in most cases, right? And why are they great? Because they knew they were a one word away or one hit away or one catch away from being replaced, right? They just
One-
knew, like at Ohio State, there's 15 wide receivers. So, of course, I'm going to bring in the Buckeyes. There's 15 people waiting to take that person's job, right?
Yep,
In the military, it's the same thing, right, Drew? That military people come into this business, they do really well. Why? Because they know discipline and they're held accountable, right?
100%.
And if they don't do what the expectations are, they're going to die. And because of that, they transfer that to business. So that's so powerful. And I love the fact that you said your porter knows they can tell you anything. That's
Yes.
there's a voice. That's one of the chapters in this book. Do your people have a voice?
Yep.
I heard somebody say recently, a great leader, he said, "Why would I hire somebody to do a job and not listen to what they have to say about that job?" Right? Why would
Right.
I think I'm a better porter than my porter just because I have a job where I'm sitting on the top floor, right? So
Correct.
thank you so much. Thank you for the time. Your time's so valuable, and that you would take it for us, for our people listening, and for me personally. I'm honored always to hang out with you. Thank you for allowing me to serve your team and growing me to be better. I appreciate it, Drew.
I appreciate it as well. Appreciate the time.
Yes, sir. God bless you. Share it with people. Listen to it. Let us know what you think. And we so much appreciate you joining us every week. God bless everybody. See you next time on Keep the Change.